Cool. Alrighty. I think we are live with round seven from Sligo Chess Festival. We're watching Grandmaster Felix play. On board one again. He won yesterday's round for those that were following round six with Black, a very critical game against the tournament number two seed. And now he's playing one of the other favorites in the event today, International Master Emil Risteski, who I believe represents, yeah, North Macedonia. So we're just getting the first moves right now. Knight f3 on the board from Felix, which I think he played an earlier round, maybe a couple rounds even. So his usual knight f3, black goes knight f6, c4, and here black goes g6. So indicating that he's ready to play either King's Indian or Grunfeld. Hey, we got Clay Jadon. Hello, hello. Knight c3 played by Felix. Opening moves are coming relatively quickly. It'll be interesting to see what both players prepared going into this game. Who starts thinking first? Bishop g7, allowing white to play into a proper King's Indian if white wants with e4, but Felix instead went g3. So going for fianchetto system. Then castles played. I'm expecting bishop to g2, and looks like we're going to be getting an English structure very soon. Bishop g2 played. As I see on the live feed, black has played d6, e5. Castles here comes in from Felix. Both players still blitzing. And it seems like white is actually going to be putting the pawn on d3 instead of the usual d4. So here Felix just castled. He could have played d4 on the last move. This would just transpose directly into fianchetto King's Indian. Definitely very combative opening. I think Emil, his opponent, is a King's Indian player, so I don't think this has come as a surprise to Felix that he's getting this kind of setup from black. So it seems like he's very deliberately just trying to play kind of a classic English setup. You can call it reverse dragon, reverse Sicilian dragon, which isn't the most, let's say, dangerous approach these days for white, but it is very positional. So feels like Felix is in a kind of technical mood today, playing slow positional game. Because even here, actually, he could have still played d4 and gotten himself into a pretty normal fianchetto King's Indian where black can play like knight c6, knight d7, and so on. But instead, we get d3. So based on the video, feels like black played a5, maybe even right here. In fact, I'm expecting this move. And it doesn't seem like Felix has made any moves after that. So perhaps a5 was played after some think, and then Felix is having a bit of a think himself. Although I see on the camera he just played rook to b1. So I'm not sure exactly about the times, like who's been thinking, but looks like we have a5, rook to b1 on the board. So pretty classic English structure here. This is something I've played a couple times from black side and maybe even once or twice from white side as well. And yeah, generally it leads to kind of a calm positional battle. White's play is very simple. They're just trying to go a3, b4 and expand on the queen side and use the power of the bishop on the long diagonal, so b5 in the future, and then trying to break through either with b6 or perhaps going after an open a file, etc., etc. And black here is mainly playing on the king side, but also sometimes in the center. Like black has ideas of going like c6 and d5 to try and take the center, of course, with the e pawn defended. Or black can also play like knight h5 or knight e8 and play a King's Indian style type of play with f5 and pushing on the king side. Um, so let's just say one more time, folks, how important this game is. Round seven. This is Felix playing against the co-leader. So both players have 5 out of 6 points. Felix is the number one seed in the tournament. He's got white in this game. His opponent, I think, is a number three player, maybe number four. And this is a very, very important game because this is one of Felix's last white games, right? So next round he plays black against someone. Although actually that will be interesting to think about who he might play because he's already played a lot of the top players. But in the last 2 rounds, anything can happen. So this is like Felix's last chance to break away. Although I kind of understand his approach here. It feels like he's playing a very kind of like risk-free game. Usually this is a pretty quiet opening choice. And I feel like a draw here is actually not the worst result for Felix because he's actually played a lot of the top players. So in his last 2 rounds, he might get some lower rated uh, opponents. Actually, let me just see like what's going on in the standings. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I think Felix is a grandmaster and high rated player, so just out of principle, he's gonna he's gonna play for the win here. But thinking about the tournament, it's not the worst thing if he does draw this game. So I definitely respect the kind of approach to try and minimize risk as much as possible. So there's a couple players on 4.5, and yeah, Felix has already played Kostya. That's the guy he defeated yesterday. Very nice endgame. And I don't think he's played the FIDE master Adam Collins, who has 4.5 points, 2,300. And I'm not sure he's played Yannick Woods, who is 1970 rating with 4.5 points, having a fantastic performance there from Ireland. He has played Jason Liu, who has 4 points, and there's a bunch of players with 4 points. He's played a couple of them, I think. So yeah, next round Felix is likely getting black against Adam Collins. I'm curious what the other games are. So right now, Krostov is playing against Yannick Woods. We can just take a look at their position. So this is the 1970 that has 4.5 points in the tournament. Uh, Doing extremely well. Seems like they have an English with an early and controversial bishop takes c6 idea. And then Adam Collins, the other player with 4.5 points, he has black against one of the fours, 2077 from Ireland as well. This looks like some kind of French. Lars was asking in the chat, how does one judge if an opening is positional or tactical? Well, I think it just depends on like what you observe in the games. Like typically in Sicilians and Nidors, we see a lot of like tactics and sacrifices. So we conclude that it's a tactical opening. And in quieter systems like Slav, London system, there's generally like less tactics, so it's considered more positional. But of course, it's all just kind of generally speaking, almost any opening you can play it in a really aggressive and tactical way. It's just certain openings tend to lean towards one direction versus another. The English is definitely one that leans more positional, I would say. Not that there aren't like tactics and tons of tactical ideas, and eventually the games can explode. But generally, as we go back to Felix's position, I think a5, rook b1 is the live board with black thinking here. So black already spending time. Here, no pawns have been traded, so there aren't many open lines. And so there's not a lot of tactics kind of looming just yet. But these positions do tend to get very, very complicated as both sides have tons and tons of ideas. Yeah, I mean, of course, if White wanted to play d4, he would have done so earlier, but his idea is to kind of keep control over the light squares in the center and basically just wants to go a3, b4. I can share with you guys roughly how a few of my games have gone. I've normally seen this position from Black's point of view, and I think I've always liked this move rook to e8 or knight to c6. I think both are reasonable. Probably knight to c6 I would play here. White typically continues a3. And then here Black has a lot of options. Some players like to play h6 in order to prevent the idea to play bishop to g5 and take on f6. I personally don't think this is that scary, so I just go rook e8 here. If white does play bishop g5 and gives up the bishop here, this is very, very common, but in general, I haven't really experienced a ton of issues here as black. I think I had one or two games like this where I was more or less fine. One idea is to bring the bishop back and start pushing on the king side with f5, maybe even g5, maybe even h5, and just playing for the king side attack. The other idea is to try and like reroute this knight to e7 and then build the center with like c6 and d5, maybe even bishop e6, which I think is possible as well. And yeah, in general, I haven't really faced a ton of problems here as black play can continue like b4, for example, takes. I think bishop to g7, for instance. At some point, white probably wants to play b5. Um, if they don't, I might go knight e7 anyway, but let's say b5 here I think is pretty normal. And yeah, I would think knight e7 here for black, and generally black's position is all right. At some point, maybe moving the rook somewhere and trying to play b6, so you're not falling into any tactics. Bishop e6 can also be played here at some point, maybe in queen c8. But yeah, knight d2 and play continues. Um, there's a funny trick which I wonder if it works here. I just want to check. But sometimes black has this really cute idea to play e4 in these positions, which for me, like every time I see it, I'm like, how does that work? Why does that work? That shouldn't work. But it's crazy. The pawn can be taken four different times, but I don't think that's a good idea because the knight is hanging on c3. If you take with this knight, you get hit with f5, and it looks like the knight's trapped. And if you take with the other knight, then you still get hit with f5 because this knight is now defending the knight on c3. So that's what I mean. Like, there's always tactics kind of lurking in the position. Of course, white, I think, is still okay. Can play like queen c2, just defending the knight. But then black has kind of achieved something that they've opened up the bishop on g7, and now maybe just takes, and knight f5, bishop f5. I think black in general is doing um, quite reasonably here. So this is just one way the game could go. White doesn't have to play bishop to g5. For me, it feels um, a bit toothless. But but okay, in any position, you can still get outplayed. But I think usually players here are going for either like knight d2 or b4. They're just kind of keeping the bishop on the board and then playing for the queenside expansion. Yeah, so there's someone in chat saying they play for bishop d2. And okay, we have action on the camera, so um let's try to figure out what happened here. Hold on, there's a bishop on black played bishop g4 and then b4 from Felix rather quickly too. So a3, here black had, wait, no, there's no b4, excuse me. E4 was played. Oh, it's bishop f5, e4, bishop to g4. So here black played bishop f5. Wait, let me go back on the video just to make sure I got it right, because bishop f5 is kind of surprising move. But wait, no, pawn is on e4, so a5. What move did black play? Oh, black played rook e8, I think. Ah, I see. Okay. Okay, now I understand. So, excuse me. So, sorry, I'm just following the video, so it's a bit hard for me to track. So, rook e8 was played, which is a very normal move. I might have started with knight c6, but I think rook e8 is absolutely fine. Rook e8 often intends to push e4. Maybe even right away, like maybe even a3, e4 might be possible. I think it's not so easy for white to take advantage of this one. So a lot of times people respond to this with like either knight d2 or something like bishop to g5, right? Like these ideas we've looked at. But Felix went e4, which is a really interesting move because like generally if white wants to play with an e4 setup, this is known as like the Botvinnik English, the Botvinnik setup. Usually this knight wants to develop to e2 so that it's not in the way of the f4 push. So with knight f3 and e4, this always looks a bit weird, but at the same time, it also just kind of shuts down the position and takes like a very closed character. And I found like these structures can be very annoying to face as black if you don't know the exact plan. Like if you don't know exactly what you're doing and you just kind of make random moves, white can still build up like bishop e3, h3, knight somewhere, f4, f5, g4, and all of a sudden you're just getting mated. It's plus 2.5. Good game, you know? So uh this can be scary. Black went bishop g4, and it appears that Felix, okay, I'm a little bit behind on the camera, but he went h3, bishop takes f3, and thinking about how to recapture here, not totally automatic. I don't think it actually matters too much. Like whatever piece you recapture with here, you're probably going to want to reposition it very soon in view of knight c6, knight d4. Um, but Felix taking a bit of a think on bishop takes f3 and finally recaptures with the bishop. Okay, and now let me make sure I don't miss any moves. Looks like black started thinking here again for a bit. I'm not familiar with Felix's opponent. He seems like actually not like middle-aged. So experienced international master, maybe actually in his 20s or so. I'm not sure what his age is. Okay, he just played knight c6. And do we have a move yet? No, I think from here Felix has still been thinking. He's now like Felix, he's getting into the game. He's currently getting into the game. Now it's like, okay, he's probably out of his book because black played bishop g4. I think not the most expected move. h3, bishop takes f3. He spent some time here. I think he wasn't totally expecting black to do this. I mean, black has so many options in these positions. So, of course, they can always kind of give up the bishop here, but it might be a situation where Compy just gives white a small advantage here. So you don't really take it too seriously. You just think like, okay, if they give the bishop, I'll take, and then I'll play that position from there, no problem. So I feel like it seems like Felix is now kind of getting into the game. It's like, all right, now we have this middle game. What am I doing here? What are the plans? Bishop e3, bishop g2, maybe f4, maybe a3, b4, queen to d2. Generally, these positions I feel like are pretty straightforward for white to play, but yeah, you want to be precise with the move order. You don't want to allow black any unexpected counterplay. But I kind of like this position for Felix here. It feels like he can just kind of slowly push and build up, and um, yeah, not that easy for black to actually find counterplay. Because if we think about it, like what is black's plan here? White has a bunch of improving moves he can make. Bishop g2, bishop e3, queen d2, a3, b4, f4. Like all these moves he can just make almost on autopilot. Um, but from black's point of view, it's like what is black doing? One plan they do have is they can reposition this knight to e6. I think that's pretty typical to try to take total control over the d4 square. So definitely that's one idea. And knight c6, so it's white's turn here, by the way. So he might want to start with a3, just with this in mind. So on knight d7, he can go b4 and prevent this idea. It doesn't totally prevent it because black can still go knight f8, knight e6. But at least you can feel like you have accomplished something by stopping knight c5. But I don't know how big of a difference um, it makes. But just to make some moves on the board. We might get something like this, knight d4, bishop g2. Let's say knight comes into e6, perhaps bishop e3 just to develop. And yeah, it's a long game, actually. It's not obvious to me that white is doing so fantastic here, but maybe f4 is coming. Actually, thinking about it a little bit, f4 is in the air, followed by f5, and black will have to answer this question, like how they're going to respond to this one. Because f5 is not something black really wants to play with white's bishop on g2. So f4 and f5 is actually coming. So even something like this, where it feels like black has achieved a nice setup on the dark squares, it's like not that obvious that black is comfortable. But I don't know. I mean, the action continues. Rook c3. Don't go queen d2 because of this one. And then queen takes knight e2 check. Um, but okay, white can go rook c1. This is still okay. White could consider knight d5 in a position like this, but then white always has to reckon with c6. And yeah, things get messy. Take, knight b6, knight b4. There's options here, but kind of seems like black is fairly solid here. White hasn't really achieved their f4 break just yet. Um, if knight e2 though, then I'm thinking black can just trade knights and just bring the other one in. And then, okay, just to imagine some kind of position like this we might get in the future, would this be advantageous for white? I definitely think white would be at least slightly better, but feels like it'd be kind of hard to win this in the long run. Earlier in the tournament, Felix had a really interesting game with opposite color bishops against the chess nerd. You guys might know Zach. And Felix was winning that one, but it ended up drawn because, well, he just wasn't able to figure out he wasn't able to find the win, with low time. So these positions can be pushed to a decisive advantage. They can become very unpleasant. But objectively, okay, I would guess that it's you know close to equal, and black should be able to hold it. So okay, that's just kind of quick preview to what might be coming. It looks like, wait, Felix made a move. I think he played bishop e3. So there's no a3. He played bishop e3 here. Okay, also a very logical move. I like that he played it pretty fast. I mean, you could like spend tons of time in this position trying to think about like which moves to play, but ultimately you just have to get your pieces out and start pushing stuff forward. You can't really account for everything. So bishop e3, and now black is spending some time himself. And looks like we have a move. The camera is a bit glitchy, but I think it looks like 97 to me, which, yeah, is this kind of like typical regrouping. Yeah, I think he played 97 here. So far the IMs uh, certainly thinking alike. By the way, folks, I'm not really using Engine for the commentary. Yesterday I said I might like check it at some points. I ended up not not looking at it. I just find it more interesting to look at the game without the engine. I feel like um, you're a lot closer actually to what the players might be thinking. And when one of the players like Felix makes a move that is unexpected, it's actually kind of interesting because it shows you the difference between someone like me and someone like him who's actually playing. But yeah, I feel like you get a much better chance of actually guessing what the players are thinking about when you're looking at the position um, without the engine. I think the eval just kind of gives away too much about what's going on. Um, so yeah, I think it's just more fun to look at it this way. I watched Felix's recap from yesterday, by the way. Yeah, it was very interesting to see his thoughts on the game. And yeah, like why he was spending so much time on what I thought were very clear moments, but obviously, okay, obviously justified. Today so far, I think his time management is great. He's up on the clock. I think he's gotten in the position that he was looking for, given given that he's played this all relatively quickly. But now, of course, he has to actually prosecute the position, right? He has to actually handle this well. So he's to start building up. And Black just played 97, so Black just 100% um, just revealed what he's trying to do. He's going for this maneuver, knight f8, 96, and then trying to establish his knights on the d4 square. He might even play knight c5 because Black, I think, would welcome White to give up the dark square bishop and just give Black total control over the d4 square. Um, and yeah, now Felix has to figure out how to proceed from here. One of the most typical ideas I would say is pulling the bishop back in f4. We might see this now. He might just like wait on a3, b4, which doesn't really give White a whole lot in this position, actually. Now that like he's played e4, I'm not sure I totally see the point of a3, b4 because one thing it does is it gives Black an open a file to start using. And then, okay, you play b5, but the knight wants to go to d4 anyway. So I'm thinking he might just revert to this kind of classic kingside plan, like with the Botvinnik setup. Generally, it was all about playing f4. So that would be kind of my approach here. Either bishop g2 and f4, or maybe h4, h5 is another option, especially since Black just played knight d7. And these days, everyone is obsessed with this h4 idea. Yeah, my eyes would actually be drawn to h4 because the computer just like it's driving us crazy. It's like every position is just saying like play h4, play h4, and here there's a pawn on g6, so like it actually makes sense to play h4. So actually, I would be thinking a lot about h4, but it looks like from the camera he has played bishop to g2, so he's played the more human way, not the alpha zero way, which okay would make sense. You play h4, h5, you kind of soften up the king side, but okay, you can also this plan hasn't gone anywhere, so you can resort to it later. So bishop g2 clearly indicates he wants to go f4 and f5. So now if Black plays knight c5, for example, I think he's pushing f4. Knight on c3 is defended, yeah, so there's no real ideas here with ef4. White would just take back with the pawn and then enjoy really strong center here. Okay, so there's still knight e6 to control this square, but these kind of dynamic pawns feel very, very dangerous, especially with White having this um, light squared bishop. So I would be extremely worried here if I was Black. White has 95, 92, feels like a lot of moves. So 96, for example, then White can push f5. Let's say 94, and yeah, it's hard to fully know what's happening in this kind of position. At first glance, it looks like White is just cruising with the pawns and just about to completely steamroll Black. But Black has ideas like bishop f6, for example. And if Black takes over the dark squares, then it's a completely different story. So queen d2, for instance, but maybe g5. And yeah, it always seems hard for me to judge these positions. I don't know, maybe this is just straight up good for White, like h4. If takes g5, that looks horrible. So h6, Black has to play. And then maybe just king f2, rook h1, and starting to build up. And maybe it's defendable, but optically, these positions always look incredibly scary to me from Black's point of view. Although, well, yeah, actually, it's just directly like, just directly. I mean, this was complete, sample line. Black is playing a bit cooperatively, but this is an example of how it could just be GG. And it's just like the knights are fantastic, great job, knights. But Yeah, G5 is falling. So this is how it could be a problem for black. Hey, Arnie in the chat. Shout out to Arnie. So that is what I'm kind of imagining is going through Felix's mind. This is kind of what he wants. And black here so far hasn't responded to to bishop G2. So I don't feel like Emil, his opponent, is the most comfortable in this structure here. Like maybe he's seen it before, but or he has like a general idea like what to do, bring the knight to E6. But I don't know, I don't think he's like 100% confident in what he's doing here. So yeah, will be a very thematic game actually to see like how does black deal with this just typical push F4, F5. Um, let's see. I mean, he played knight D7, so yeah, I feel like the knight is going somewhere. Knight C5 would be the most expected follow-up after knight D7 or knight F8, knight E6, but one of these moves. But he's spending time because he sees, of course, F4, F5 coming, and he wants to know exactly how he's going to deal with this. And yeah, it's hard to like anticipate from here from blacks because you have to visualize everything in your brain. Yeah, like you have to see all this coming, and then G4, G5 is a problem. And I don't know if anyone can find improvement on this line, but this looks pretty disastrous for black. H4. Taking is really bad because I think because of G5, so H6, and then King F2. So not taking bishop takes G5, but maybe that was the improvement. Sorry, so rook, we went King G7, Rook H1, Rook H8. Of course, I blundered here a little bit with takes, pawn takes. Black could have taken with the bishop, and okay, here actually black I think is doing all right because they're controlling the dark squares. I don't see this working for white. So, okay, so that's very important detail. So HG bishop G5, which probably means that white should throw in knight D5. Now threatening to take, well, threatening to take on F6 first and then take on G5 twice, basically. Okay, black still has GH4, but then we would be able to take and go push. Very scary for black. Very scary. Why not just knight D5 instead of king F2? Maybe knight D5 here, actually. Absolutely. Just looking to break through on the dark squares. This could be a follow-up. So it feels super shaky. If GH4, yeah, takes on F6, and then either G5 or bishop takes H6, I think the dark squares are in white's favor here. Big time. Big time. And this is the Botvinnik setup. You know, this is the poison of the Botvinnik setup. You get this like complete grip on the center. The center doesn't open. So it's like, okay, black can hop around with the knights, but you're just cracking him on the king side. Wait, we have moves. Knight c5 has been played, folks. Alert. Knight c5 on the board. And has Felix made a move? Chat, it's your job to follow the video. Is it, or is, it's hard for me to see, but maybe you guys can see. Is it Felix's clock that is, it seems like Felix's clock. Okay, so Felix is just up from the board. And he's checking out some of the other games. But Knight c5 played. And now I would expect f4. F4 and F5. I mean, it looks very scary. Yeah, okay, yeah. Felix is back of the board. He's written down knight c5. I don't think he's going to blitz out F4, but it is kind of the most logical move in the position, I would say. There's also queen d2. A lot of players like to go queen d2 first for some reason, just to connect rooks. But I'm not sure there's like you actually have to do this here. For me, it feels like f4 is a lot more natural, assuming that black doesn't have any tricks here on takes takes. I mean, there is this idea, perhaps, bishop d4, just trading off the bishop. So maybe actually before f4, white might even want to go like king h1 or king h2 here. Actually, I think there is something to think about because this idea to trade off the bishops, it's a little bit annoying for white, although now this bishop I would say is not the worst piece in the world. But yeah, I'm not totally clear on what's happening here. Queen d2, queen f6. No, knight d5. This would be not good for black. So queen d2. It feels like here white still has this kind of nice center. Can go rook d1 next, queen f2. Eventually black will have to take, queen takes. Then we can try to push d4. So black can trade off the bishops, but I think black ends up worse because they are conceding the center with ef4, right? You guys see that? When you go ef4 here, you're effectively trading this pawn for this pawn, right? Because these two pawns remain on the board. But can I do color here? These pawns don't. These pawns go off. Wait, let me do the other way around actually. So the blue pawns stay on the board, and then the red pawns come off the board. So white is trading their G pawn for the center pawn. G pawn is also in front of white's king, but maybe black can't really exploit that. But white is getting this nice center here. So f4 I think is playable, but yeah, I could see the logic behind just starting with king h2 so that you can avoid the bishop trade altogether with something like bishop d2 here and then keep the attack going. At least that's probably what I would be thinking about here. Okay, so yeah, Felix now deep in thought. He was walking for a bit, maybe checking other games. And let's see, what time is it there? So they're about, I think, 6 hours ahead in Ireland. So for them, it's about 5 p.m. right now. So they're right heading into the evening. We had someone watching from Austria. Shout out to Austria. I imagine rooting for Felix. I was wondering what it's like to live in Austria. Must be nice, actually. Must be nice. Um, I've never been, but it seems wonderful. It's the best. Nice. Okay, I got good. I should set the settings here so that it's high def. There we go. Oh, so nice. Yes, that would be so cool. Yeah, I haven't seen Vienna yet. That's still one of like the big cities on my list. Okay, so Felix still thinking here. Might go into might go into a tank. Seems like he's not super confident about pushing f4, which I think is perfectly fine. But again, yeah, there's reasons here to start with king h2, queen d2, and so on. Am I gonna be in Granky again? I'm not feeling pumped about Granky. I think it's coming up very quickly. So I just got back from a trip, so I feel overwhelmed to um, commit to another trip so soon. And it's during the candidates. I feel like it's gonna be too fun to just cover the candidates live, so I'm not sure I even want to play during candidates. Um, so I might skip it this year, sadly. It was a very nice event last year. Oh, I didn't even know about the Vienna International Open. Wow. But yeah, actually thinking about it, it's hard to name a lot of events in Austria, which is a bit unfortunate. Be cool if there was more chess there. Yeah, it's tough to play during the candidates. I mean, I have like 40% of my brain preoccupied with what's happening. Okay, I'm curious what's going on here on board two, because this is quite relevant for our standings. These are a couple players with 4.5 points. This was also English opening, and White did this early bishop takes c6. Bishop takes c6 and queen d2. So not just one weird move, but two. And these are actually like, this is a thing these days where the idea is to then play b3, bishop b2. You're kind of playing like long term against the structure. So white has essentially tricked black into playing a Rossolimo in a way. And oh, wait, we have a move from Felix. Looks like he actually just went quiet b3. Okay, so we'll get to that. Very interesting move. b3. Um, here on board two, f4, white has just pushed like here, Felix was thinking about pushing f4, doesn't push f4 here, white pushes f4 super early. I think he wants to bring his knight out behind the pawn and then get e4. So Krastevir are definitely playing for the win to try to get to 5.5 points if the result on board one ends up drawn. So, knight c5 and now b3 played by Felix. B3 is very, very slow. One idea, like the classic idea is to go like A3, B4 here, but of course he could have played, um, oh, sorry, we had a little bit different move order. It was like this, here, here, bishop E3, knight C5, and now B3. But of course he could have played, okay, sorry, he played bishop E3 first, knight D7, then bishop G2, knight C5, and then B3. Yeah, because at this point, if he starts with A3, then there's A4. Although even here, is this the most clear? Because we can snag this and snag this. And this is a typical pawn for black to sacrifice, especially in King's Indian positions. But I'm not sure this is exactly the situation. Maybe black has compensation, but it is an extra pawn for white, like a very, very healthy extra pawn in the long run, I would think. Um, so I don't really know if his idea is to go A3 with this move B3. The other thing is, if he wanted to play A3, he could have done it at any moment. Like he played bishop E3, he could have played A3 right here and then gone for B4 if that was his plan. And then he went bishop E3, knight D7, and then here he again could have gone A3 where there's no A4 if he wanted to go B4. And totally logical, no one would criticize him for doing so. So it's a bit funny to go bishop G2, knight C5, and now say like, oh, now I want to play A3, B4. Oh, but now A3, A4 is a problem, so I'm going to start with B3. So I kind of feel like his idea is not to play A3 super fast, but rather just to like reposition the knight, play queen, like just to kind of keep it very, very slow, build up, maybe even try to push D4, which, okay, I don't think black is going to allow because black just played knight D4 himself. So he doesn't even go for the full outpost with knight e6 and knight d4 trying to recapture the piece. He just plays knight d4 right away. He says if you're going to give up the dark square bishop, go ahead. Actually, this is kind of a nod to Felix's game from yesterday. I don't know if anyone was watching, but yesterday Felix had a kind of a similar situation as Black, where his opponent ended up giving the dark square bishop, and then he was able to kind of milk that long term and eventually win. It was a very, very nice game, I thought, actually. Very nice technical game for Felix, showing the power of the bad bishop. So here, if white takes, black takes, goes 92. I would think this is mildly more comfortable for white, just because you have the clean pawn structure. You still have this f4 idea, but it seems like black is kind of okay on the dark squares too. Like maybe c6 here. I'm not sure. F4. Let's just say, for example, queen e7. As soon as you go g4, I was gonna say maybe g5, but maybe not g5 actually. G5 kind of gives knight g3, but maybe black just does nothing, just sits. And yeah, it's not so easy for white to achieve something here on the king side. Is f5, bishop e5. Black can just take over the dark squares if white pushes too early. It's hard to play queen e1 because of this pawn. So to me, it feels like black is correct in that he doesn't mind the exchange on d4. And yeah, Felix now is in full focus here, deep in thought, trying to figure out how to play. Another idea would be knight e2 to trade off the knight for this knight on d4 rather than your bishop. So if allowed, then knight takes d4 ed, then I think white is still better there, exactly with the bishop pair. But black could go knight e6, for instance, and just kind of reinforce, take, and yeah, we could get something like this. Here, I think white is keeping a small edge. He's trying to kind of build up on the king side with f4, f5, and so on. But yeah, it's not so simple. Maybe there's other options as well. Though my instinct definitely kind of pushes me towards 92 here because you don't really want to tolerate this knight on. Well, actually, do we have to do anything with this knight on d4? Why can't we play for our f4 plan as before? Maybe even just f4 right away. I don't actually see a way for black to exploit this. Or although there is an okay, other than the most obvious move in the position, guys, I don't see a way for black to exploit the diagonal other than the absolute most obvious move in the position. But wait, does this work? No, we take, right? Take, and queen takes. And we have two pieces for the rook. So this doesn't work for black. Okay. So then I actually don't see a way for black to exploit. And we can cover up with rook c1 next, queen d2. Knight d5 as well is there. So this would be very nice kind of center for white. So maybe just f4 now for Felix. Actually, I don't think he has to touch this knight at all. Because one of the things we saw in the other position when white was like pushing with f4, f5, g4, queen d2, at a certain point, this knight lands on d5 with great effect. So it makes sense for white to keep the knight on the board, right? Keep more pieces on the board for the attack. Though now, the way black is set up, of course, he can play c6 whenever he wants to and keep this knight out of d5, which I think he will. Okay, do we have a move? Did you guys see the move? What was the move? A move was played. Was it rook e1? It looks like a very subtle move was played. Let me go back. Okay, he's thinking. H4 played. Oh, he goes back to H4. Okay. He couldn't resist the lure of the Alpha Zero H4. I was thinking F4 didn't look half bad here. He starts with H4. H4 actually is a bit controversial though. Because let's say black plays H5, for example. Not saying this is a good move, but just for instance, the drawback of H4 is that now it's harder to play F4. Because here when black takes, if you take with the pawn, you're dropping this H pawn. So there are some differences here with having played H4. And if you take with the bishop, it's not really what you want to do because you've given up the E5 square here in a way. So H4 actually is a bit of a committal decision. Of course, if black goes H5, we're not forced to play F4, but we have other ideas. But G4, queen takes H4. So G4 is not so easy to achieve. If bishop G5, then there's F6, for example. And now maybe black has time like queen D7 and can keep white from breaking through so easily. But still, F4, of course, white always has ideas here. So, okay, H4, definitely very thematic way of pushing on the king side. And now black is under pressure. He has to figure out how to deal with this one. It's the classic question now these days. Do you play H5 or do you let white play H5 themselves? Because there's also logic to just allowing white to push H5 with a move, for example, like with bishop F6. Maybe we start with C6, and in case of H5, we go bishop F6 as black, trying to take over the dark squares. White says you merely adopted the dark squares, but no, I think black generally is winning the dark squared battle, which is kind of logical because black is the one with the two knights. Black is the one with the two knights in the position, whereas white is the one with the light squared bishop. So just going off of piece count, it's like black has three pieces that can control the dark squares. White only has two that can fight for them. So yeah, F4, black can take a bunch of times, go knight e6, for example, and um, super double edged. But okay, this is what black is trying to figure out right now, how to deal with this. So c6, for example, h5, bishop f6, and if queen d2, g5, perhaps. So maybe this is one direction black is looking at. Of course, white can also play f4 at this moment, which to me, this looks pretty scary for black. This feels like white is just kind of getting everything. Although from here, where do you go? If you push f5, you get hit shut down with g5. So even here, it's actually, like white has to continue to build up. So bishop h3, king g2, rook h1, kind of slow attack. But it feels very unpleasant for black. So the other option is to go h5, where you kind of slow white down a little bit. But on the other hand, if white does ever get g4 in, they still have chances to break through. Feels like h5 might be the more kind of sober approach here, but yeah, I'm not sure. Very tough call here for black. So nice question here posed by Felix. And Emil is spending time. Now he's not doing too badly on time so far, I would say, but it is a 90 plus 30 game. So if he starts to spend a lot of time, and looking at the clock, to me it looks like black is about 56 minutes right now. If he starts spending a little bit too much time here, he's going to get down to 40 minutes, 30 minutes, and yeah, position's going to get very sharp. So still can't make sense of B3. Yeah, B3, that's gonna be a recap question for Felix. Felix, if he watches this, we gotta know what was the thinking behind B3? Because it's such a slow move if you're just gonna end up playing H4 anyway. And yeah, all it seems to do is just kind of like make this knight loose. In his defense, it is like a move I've seen in many of these in many games that I've looked at, like in these structures. But yeah, to be fair, I've never really thought about like what the purpose is. It just feels like a move that white plays. Like okay, I always feel like King H2, King H1. This move helps very like obviously getting the king out of any checks, but like B3 I have seen in these positions, and I'm like, yeah, what is the idea? Maybe it's simply to restrict black from pushing A4 himself. Maybe let's say white played H4. Maybe for whatever reason, he was not wanting to allow black to push A4 without being able to push B4 to push past. So in a way, he's restricting. Um, my guess is he was expecting knight E6, and then he had something in mind here that he liked. I'm not really sure. Like he's just waiting for black to make some move, and he thought B3 is going to help him. But yeah, that's a recap question. Absolutely. Yeah. First Grandmaster move of the day. Absolutely. Um, first GM move of the day. But yeah, so B3, knight D4 happened, and now H4 on the board. And yeah, black here spending some time. Felix getting up from the board, checking out some other games. Why don't we follow suit? See what other positions Felix is looking at. So this is board two. This is very important for the tournament standings. This is Krostov against Yannick Woods, who 1970 player, but with 4.5 points, having the tournament of his life. Just played knight f5. I was expecting knight f3 and e4 here from white, but he castles instead. Castles. And long term, he's looking to use this diagonal. So this is a very, I think, very, very aggressive kind of setup for white. Opposite sides castling. The opponent already has a semi-open b file, but white's saying that black isn't going to be able to do anything. A5, knight a4, just kind of shutting everything down. So e5, black says, you know what? I'm going to open up the center, actually. Thank you so much. And here white is thinking. Oh, we have a move. Looks like C6 played. C6 played. Okay, so let's jump back to board one. After B3, knight D4, H4, black goes C6. He's saying go ahead and play H5. So on H5, what does he have in mind? I mean, my first thought was bishop F6. Maybe there's other moves, but I'm not quite sure because if you don't start fighting for the dark squares, white is definitely gonna just completely squeeze you. Queen D2, F4, and so on. So sooner or later, I think you do need to play bishop F6 and try to fight back. Maybe not though, actually. Maybe black just does nothing. Let's just say black does. Okay, it's hard to do nothing, but let's say black plays super chill. Just goes queen E7. White pushes F4. That's the other thing that's unpleasant for black. It's not that easy to just shuffle. It feels like white can just improve the position, but it's hard for black to move. Oh, what about G5? Actually, yeah, good point. If H5, maybe black just wants G5. Okay, it gives up a lot of light squares, but it does shut down the play. I mean, white can still go F4 though. Maybe it's feels very complicated actually. So let's say F4, and if black takes everything, which would be kind of a normal reaction, maybe bishop takes F4. This feels kind of nice for white. This feels like white is gonna be able to use the light squared bishop very if I like this bishop feels strong. You got king h1, rook g1 coming. Feels like white is quite happy here. A3 played. A3. Okay, so Felix is just all over the place. So see, he went B3, he went H4, C6, and now he's going A3. So he could have played A3 B4 a long time ago without spending this tempo, but okay, he goes back to this plan, A3. And I guess now he's saying like now that you played C6, now I can play B4 and B5 and try to target this pawn. But honestly, I'm not quite sure I'm seeing the vision here for white. I feel like black is well equipped to meet this play, can just put the knight on e6, bring the queen out, connect the rooks. Generally, when white plays for this b4 plan, he has the pawn back on e2, and the bishop is exerting a lot of pressure on the diagonal. Here with e4, bishop on g2 is kind of misplaced for the battle on the queen side. It's not really helping. And black actually played 96 here, actually relatively quickly. So he's not too worried about b4. He's kind of paying the tempo. First, he's saying, all right, I'll just pay in advance, go ahead and play b4, and then I'll take and figure out what to do. And now if Felix doesn't play b4, then he really is not showing not showing a clear plan, so to speak. But maybe he won't play b4. Maybe he's gonna wait on it. Well, one thing actually you do have to be careful because b4 doesn't come with tempo, so there is rook a3, and you always have to watch out for that one. So rook a3, white has to be ready to play rook to c1, which is not ideal because maybe rook to b3 or something, rook gets behind. Or white goes knight e2, but then this also isn't ideal because maybe you didn't want to trade off the knights and kind of free up black's position a bit. So actually now maybe I would hesitate a bit on b4. I think after knight e6, you can definitely start with queen d2 here, and then yeah, b4 is not really going anywhere. So definitely have to be precise because if takes rook a3, you need an answer here as uh as white. Hello, Eli. Hello, hello. So 96 played. Now, yeah, I'm not so sure about b4. I might start with queen d2 if I'm white here. Felix is thinking about it. He's got a small edge on the clock, so he has some time to burn. But yeah, what other moves might he consider? There's still h5. H5 hasn't gone anywhere. Now it's just funny because he played b3, then he played h4, then he goes a3, and then back to h5. So one move on the queen side, one move on the king side. But then probably g5. I think now black is like really set up to kind of play like this. So I think he's gonna wait on h5. I feel like he's with a3, he's really kind of declared his intentions to play on the queen side. But we'll see. Maybe he'll switch it up. We see that board two game in the background in the video with the wild English with the queenside castling. So that's the player they're playing with white. So now f4 actually is harder to achieve. Remember, because of this pawn on h4. So now on f4, black takes. And if you take with the pawn, you got to reckon with queen takes h4. Now maybe there's some juice here with f5, but I'm not so sure actually. Not so sure. We have this tempo. Knight can come to g5. Knight still has c5 square. It's not bad. So, and black has won a pawn. Oh, h5 play. I'm not on the live camera. Wait, let me catch up. He played h5. Oh man. Oh, and black played f5 in response. Wow. Okay, things are heating up quick. So I, man, so many questions for the recap. So b3, c6, then he goes h4. So b3, knight d4. He goes h4, c6. Then he goes a3. All right, back to the queen side, 96. Now he goes h5. So he's, yeah, truly just playing on both sides of the board. And f5 for black. F5. His opponent refusing to be trifled with. But this move, I think, is actually quite controversial because you're really letting white open up a lot of light squares. So now, for example, white can take on g6, take on f5, probably pawn takes. And then there's a lot of light squares here for white's pieces to work with. So queen h5, for example, f4, and bishop e4 might be, an idea in the position, something like this. Okay, black still has moves here. I don't know, queen g5, knight g5, but just to demonstrate the idea, white would have potentially very powerful attack here brewing. Check, fe with check. King e7, there's mate on f7, so you have to block. And then, okay, white can already win the piece back. Maybe knight e4 is just decisive. So there's some light squares here that I think we might are gonna have to start talking to. I think, yeah, Felix is now he's trying to telecommunicate with these light squares on the board because f5 played, and for me, my sirens would be lighting up here. Take for sure, and then probably take this one, queen h5. And it seems like this is exactly what white would want for the bishop on g2. So I don't know. Maybe it's okay for black, but to me it looks very, very dangerous. Yeah, so Felix here, he's deep in thought. Wondering what he's thinking about it. I mean, I don't think h6 is really what we want to do. I feel like at this point we want to take and start opening up more squares. But yeah, now Felix's play definitely has been completely justified based on his opponent reaction. So he was kind of just playing a waiting game. Yeah, just waiting for black to trying to provoke him into exposing himself a bit. So b3, h4, then he goes a3, a6, then he goes h5. But black, of course, did not have to play f5. We were thinking g5 here as an idea. I'm curious why he didn't go for this one. This definitely, I feel like would have been my instinct as black, just to keep things closed. White still has like light square play, but would he be able to break through? I'm not so sure. I think it feels like here black just has a lot of energy on the dark squares. Can we try HG and F4? Yeah, absolutely. Maybe this is black's idea, but yeah, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical. I think we take the second pawn, and I'm not even sure black wants to take this one, right? Because queen h5 and can still play for some attack even. So let's say king h8. Yeah, you can do this, I think, as black. You get some dark squares, but It is two pawns, so I always find it hard to believe. But I do think that this position would be very complicated. Like not obvious at all for white to handle. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe maybe white's just like completely crushing here, but it looks a bit tricky. Oh, and he has taken on G6. And the opponent is away from the board. So we're about to find out if HG is an automatic recapture or if he has some very very strategically clever decision in mind. Actually, it's very interesting to look at the camera right now. So HG, and he's not even reaching to recapture. Sometimes a player would at least like reach, but then start thinking. He doesn't even reach. He just goes deep in thought. So yeah, he's 100% considering F4 here. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually like the more he spends time, the more likely he is to push F4. But if he plays quickly here, then of course he's more likely to, I think, just recapture. But I don't know, this position after HG, it feels very shaky for black. So it does make me think like maybe his intention is to play F4. Okay, guys, watch the camera. Make sure we don't miss the move because this position would be his other option. But yeah, Queen H5 it looks menacing. Looks menacing, you know? If we needed a chessboard next to the word menacing in the dictionary, like we could use this position. It's F4, bishop E4. Okay, you don't have to play F4, but white is gonna have questions here. I don't know. Maybe it's reasonably solid for black. Queen F6, and everything is kind of defended. The knight is recapturing on D4. Oh, HG played. HG played. And now, yeah, we can keep opening it up with takes Queen H5. That's kind of the first thought here, but maybe there's no, Felix, yeah, he's gonna play B4. He's gonna go, all right. He played something on the king side. Now he's gonna go back to the queen side. No, no, he's grabbing. Yeah, he's reaching. Took. And now technically black has an option here, but knight takes F5 strategically feels very dubious to give up the E4 square. So I'm really expecting black to take back with the pawn. Here, I think white could even go like queen G4, kind of just welcome this structure and just play on the light square. So it's very common principle. You guys probably have heard it, but when you're playing with opposite color bishops, the side with the initiative generally has a very nice chance for the attack because if you can just keep the play on one color, in this case the light squares, then it's like you have an extra piece. Here white, would have like two pieces fighting and black would only have one. So here bishop e4, this would look very, very scary for black at the f file too. So yeah, GF played. Now once again, queen h5 is kind of the most obvious move, just outposting the queen on a strong square where it can't be easily harassed. But again, maybe there's options. Maybe again, b4. Right now, okay, the diagonal is open for the bishop. So b4, b5, just to soften black up is a very reasonable idea here. But at this point, black has really kind of started pushing on the king side. So, and open themselves up. So that's why this queen h5 just feels like such a nice square. Though it's not really going anywhere either. Does white have something else to do? So b4, queen h5. What could be other ideas? Knight e2, just because the knight doesn't seem to have a future right now anywhere else. So maybe knight e2, but yeah, not so sure about this one. But it might make sense to trade off a pair of knights to kind of leave black with less defenders on the king side. Eval wise, I feel like white is doing well here, but I don't know. I think it's kind of playable for black as well. Okay, Felix relaxing back in his chair, trying to figure out how to proceed. It's clear he went into this game with a game plan of trying to play kind of slow positional chess, but now that his opponent has exposed the king, I feel like he can't help but wonder if he can just go for some kind of direct attack. But yeah, I'm thinking one of these three moves now. Queen h5, knight e2, b4. Okay, folks, I think I'm going to take a bit of a break here. As Felix might possibly even tank at this point to figure out how to continue. Alrighty, folks, quick break. We'll be back. We'll keep the position up so you guys will be able to follow. And yeah, see you all soon, round 7, Sligo Chess Festival. Alrighty, folks, we are back live with Felix's game. We had a couple moves played. So let's catch up with the board. Actually, I think just one move play. Looks like, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. From the camera, it looks like just 92 played by Felix. So one of the moves we were thinking about here. And now Emil is thinking about how to respond to this one. So yeah, White intends to trade off one of the knights here. And I was thinking this idea makes sense because that kind of softens up Black's control over the king's side. Now that Black's king is open, it actually makes sense to trade off one of the defenders around the king and then eventually try to open him up on the light squares. So knight e2, and here Black has been thinking for some time. To me, it looks like he's got some like 46 minutes on the clock. And then Felix also actually, I don't think he is too far ahead. But yeah, this one is gonna slowly get into time scramble. Let me just check in with board two. This game was very interesting. Here, e5 was played and knight f3 after a very long think. And yeah, so this one is currently building up as well. Black having lots of moves here. Rook e8, knight d4. But White trying to long-term attack on the king side as well. But he's already down to under 40 minutes. So board two here taking on some risks. Board three, we have pretty quiet endgame actually, but bishop versus knight and high rated player is Black here, so definitely some room for Black to try and outplay his opponent in this one. I also want to check how the chess nerd is doing. Let's see, where's he playing? He's Black here, board 16. Wow, they got a lot of DGT boards. Nice. Okay, it looks like he had some kind of Stonewall. So he's playing 2270 from Poland. He goes for Stonewall Dutch with knight h6. Check brings the queen back. And White here wasn't quick to castle, so he can still move his queen and castle queenside. To me, Black's position looks rather suspect actually, because feels like White has a lot of control. He's also got the Stonewall set up. Can even go c5 somewhere here um, to stop Black from playing knight d6. So this actually doesn't look like it's going to be super fun for Black here. Oh, everyone in Sligo plays on DGT. Wow, so every board is live. Oh, very cool. Nice. Okay, oh, we have knight takes e2 on the board from Felix. So HG, EF, GF, knight e2, knight takes e2 played, and okay, I'm not an expert, but I think queen takes e2 is going to be the response. Though Felix is like, he put his head in his hands? don't, I don't totally understand. There's something he is starting to think about. Like he's thinking about his response to knight d4, but to me this feels like he's kind of just burning some time here. And his rook is on f1. So it's not like he's got some choice here. So a bit of a pause from Felix before queen takes e2. Oh, he just got a draw offer. Oh, okay. Okay, let me pull back the camera. Very astute. Yes, that would explain the thing, of course. Let me see. Let me see. Oh, yes, yes. Okay, I'm watching. He takes, hits the clock. Felix comes back to the board, and yeah, he clearly says something to him. And it's not going to be anything other than offer a draw. Wow, that's a bit bold, guys. Not going to lie. As a fellow I am playing black against Grandmaster, I probably wouldn't offer a draw just out of like respect and out of the assumption that they don't want to draw. That if they wanted to draw, they would offer me one. Um, so I don't know. Not everyone really plays according to these rules. And Felix, he just goes queen takes e2, so he does recapture. But he did think about it for some time. Like he thought about it for way longer than, of course, if the guy hadn't offered a draw. So it looks like he was thinking a little bit about accepting it, but yeah, I feel like white really has no reason to take a draw here. I definitely don't think white is worse. And yeah, he should have all the chances in the world. Now maybe black is thinking he's got some juice going with f4 here. But I don't know, f4 is super committal in the long run. So bishop d2, let's say, knight d4, queen h5. I want to go bishop e4. f3, I think we can just take it currently. And bishop e4 is coming with a check eventually on h7. G4 might even, be playable. So it definitely looks like scary for white. This knight on d4 is quite strong. There's always like potential ghosts, but yeah, f4 is also f4 definitely comes with some drawbacks, but played, by the way, played. I mean, it's kind of interesting psychologically because now there's a bit more pressure on Felix that he declined the draw to really show that he is can play for the win. But I don't know. He might not be too phased. And he did think about it. So seems to me like Felix wasn't like the most confident about his position. Now spending time here on f4. Bishop d2 does look like the most logical move to keep the rooks connected. Um, we could also consider maybe some sacrifice, like with queen h5. But no, he is pulling for the bishop here. Because this one, I don't know, I feel like it's a bit slow. There are ideas here. We want bishop e4 and queen h7, but it feels like black should be in time to defend. Queen g5, for instance. Even this, check, rook f5. It's scary. It's always scary, but I think black is probably defending. He's probably. Bishop h6 can block, so um, maybe worth a thought. But no, bishop d2 played. And now knight d4 is tempting, but maybe black wants to start with queen g5. Maybe there's other options. But queen g5 makes a lot of sense to kind of keep white's queen out. And yeah, Arkady had the same idea in the chat, exactly. Yeah, this feels extremely possible. And it's not so clear how white is going to use the light squares. Of course, b4, b5 is always there, but yeah, knight d4 is going to hold everything together. So objectively, yeah, it feels like black is fine here, but complicated position. Bravo Felix for playing on. If I was white, I might have accepted a draw if I wasn't feeling comfortable, but he's shown he's gonna push for the win and try to display the power of the light square bishop. Still a very thematic game, very I feel like textbook game for these English type of positions. Like a lot of key moments here and nuances. Queen g5 played. So yeah, we're guessing a lot of the moves. How do you get to 2000 FIDE rating from 1780? Well, you have to work hard on your chess. I think there's no really ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just have to read chess books, solve puzzles, play games, review games. I think all the knowledge is out there. It's just up to you to put in the work. Got to put in the work, guys. Got to spend time, hours working on your chess. Either studying the game, like learning new ideas, or trying to improve your skills, practicing your skills either through playing or solving or sparring. So Queen G5. Clocks I feel like are equalizing. In fact, Felix might even be a bit behind. Looks like he is reaching for something. He wants to make a move. Bishop. Yep. Pulls back. Well, looks like he was wanting to play bishop e4 here, which is very logical. Outposting the bishop and preparing king g2, rook h1 actually. It's a very nice plan, I think. So he's reaching. I've noticed Felix is a hoverer. He's a big hoverer. Like he wants to make a move, but then he has to do that final. Either he's doing like a final blunder check, or oh, he goes bishop h3. Bishop h3 played, also very logical. I was thinking maybe he goes for the h file, but he plays like this, bishop h3. And now probably he wants king g2, rook h1 as well. The hovering is interesting because it's like, are you really, what is that final few seconds of calculation? Because I've done some hovering in my day, and I feel like for me, sometimes I'm like calculating the final moments of a move, and but sometimes I'm just making sure that the move is just not an immediate blunder. Like black doesn't have any knight d4, f3s, any kind of like scary tactics that are gonna surprise me. But yeah, notice it's a typical psychological thing players like to do. They like to hover because it makes them feel like, okay, like I got to make the move. I'm ready. I'm getting. It's like their process. They're about to make a move. They do a final blunder check. They start hovering. Once they do the hover, then it's for real. It's like you're about to make a move, so you better make sure it's not a blunder. And yeah, the drawback, of course, you kind of telegraph what you want to play to your opponent, so you give them a bit of extra time to think about it. Um, and okay, it shows a bit of indecisiveness as well. So bishop h3, maybe with queen g4 idea, play for the endgame. Endgame would be, I think, a touch more pleasant for white, just because of the light squared bishop. And you still have this b4 in the long run, b4, b5, which of course allows black to infiltrate on the a file, but you gotta create some play somehow. So I guess knight d4, he's wanting queen g4. That's our idea. He might regret declining the draw. Black is better. It doesn't look that obvious to me that black is better. I feel like it's kind of at least double-edged and close to equal, but I'm not sure. If we got something like this, take, again, king g2 is coming, rook h1. I don't think it's like the most obvious position for black to handle here. Because it's hard to push e4 without losing the f pawn, and if you ever take on g3, it opens more lines for white's pieces. So yeah, bishop h3, and now black is trying to figure out what's going to happen here. Because on knight d4, I think nothing else really makes sense for white. You got to go queen g4. You got to go queen g4 here. Like queen e4 just feels like a bit artificial. Like the queen is kind of in the way. And from Black's point of view, other than knight d4, there's not a ton of moves. There's no way to stop queen g4. This is white square, so you can either anticipate it or just let it happen. Yeah, it doesn't seem that obvious that either side is really better here. I honestly would feel comfortable from either side. I think I would be fine here as white and also fine as black. Not even sure which side I would prefer to be if it was me playing, in fact. Yeah, it's really not so obvious. And yeah, now black is thinking Felix is up from the board. And I wonder if he's got a bit of a read on Emil, like, because he came into this game with a very specific game plan. He played the C4, D3 English setup, very slow, very positional. He played it pretty calmly, and now he's throwing the end game in his opponent's direction. And he even declined the draw for a few moves ago, so definitely feeling confident about his chances. What about knight d4 and f3? So knight d4, definitely one of the most logical moves in the position. I would anticipate queen g4. And let's say take, take. If you go f3, well, maybe bishop e3 for white and asking a question, how are you going to defend the pawn? Knight e2 check. You can get frisky here, but thankfully black is not in time to checkmate us. You can castle, but you can't uncastle, which would be very scary. Um, but here this one is under attack still. But okay, black can play a bit slower, like rook f8, and try to just hold on to this one. But in general, even something like this feels like white is not really not really worse. Um, what about f3 immediately? Ooh, interesting actually. With double attack. Maybe white drops back like queen d1, I'm not sure, but if takes, I think we have to take on e6. I'm not sure what this would be because here it feels like black might be losing the pawn. So f3 might not be working for black. Feels like white can win a pawn in that endgame. So Emil thinking here. Knight d4 definitely calls out, but yeah, I think he wants a response to queen to g4 and wants to know what he's gonna do there. Because yeah, actually it's very interesting psychologically. Because black is the one that offered the draw, so he's the one that was kind of wanting the game to end, you know? He's the one that's like, hey, what if we stopped playing right now? And then Felix was like, no, thank you. So psychologically, black is the one that's a little bit, I think, more um a little bit under pressure here to kind of get back into the game. Felix is like, I can do this all day. Play equal endgame, no problem. I won nice endgame yesterday. Easy. So knight d4, queen g4. Is black kind of begging for a draw there? I'm not sure. Hard to say. Well, the players here, they definitely aren't aware of the evaluation. They might have some guess, but they certainly don't know for sure. Certainly. We don't even know. How could they know? But yeah, some interesting things happen when draws are offered on the chessboard, because it is competitive. It's two humans playing against one another. They have to sit across from each other, exchange glances, his body language. Someone offered a draw and someone declined, so it's very tense. White is saying he can win this position. Okay, pulling for a move. Looks like knight d4. What else might it be? Pulls back. Felix puts the pen down. He picked up the pen. He bluffed Felix. He got Felix to pick up the pen and then he put his hand down. But I think he's kind of ready to move sooner. I feel like he is trying to avoid the time trouble. Now he's back to thinking. Back to thinking. Knight d4 is not so obvious for him. Maybe there's other moves to consider. D5? D5 I feel like is possibly exposing himself on the light squares. Queen g6 played. Okay, queen g6 was also possible. I was thinking to try and bring the knight to g5. So he's really looking to avoid the queen trade. I feel like we can understand this move as trying to avoid queen g4. There's knight g5. There's also queen takes d3, in fact, too, which I think is working. Queen takes d3. I don't really see what white has here. So he prevents queen g4 for the time being and steps out of the pin. It's actually a very logical move because now he might be threatening to play fg in some cases. Although if white just sidesteps king h2, king h1, rook comes to g1, I think black would not be so pumped about playing fg here. So moves for white, bishop g4, king h2, maybe king h1. What else can be played? b4 now I think white should be extremely careful about because b4 allows takes rook a2. That just feels like a lot of unpleasant pressure. So I think b4 is not happening for a long time. Maybe king g2 as well. Okay, so king move or bishop to g4 to me feel very logical. Bishop g4 just kind of angling at bishop h5. Felix here back to the think. Let's see, does white have other options? Oh wait, bishop g4, sorry, we have to be extremely careful of knight d4. Queen d1, queen takes d3. So bishop g4, I think not really a move because knight d4 is just too annoying. Okay, so I'm thinking one of the king moves then. King g2, king h2, king h1. But knight d4 now is coming anyway. So king h2, knight d4. This is kind of a problem. Now I'm starting to understand why black might be better. This has queen g6 move is very annoying. Knight d4 coming. And how does white deal with this? Now I'd be thinking like, oh, I wish I took the draw. Knight d4, very Very unpleasant move. If we go here and try to sack the pawn, do we have anything? It's hard to see because bishop is hanging here. And it feels like white is very far from making a threat. So we have some problems here. We have some problems here. I don't think we want to go bishop c3 just to stop knight d4. Nothing else black can take here. And win a big pawn. There is queen e4, but I think queen e4 might be kind of a last resort. Because this pawn on e4 is a bit weak. Black now has like monster d4 square, knight g5 even potentially as well. Knight g5 would force bishop g2, and then yeah, here it definitely feels like black is in control. He's just got a very strong kind of grip on the structure. Takes, pawn takes. And yeah, white basically just has bad bishop on g2. So queen e4, yeah, it just feels like last resort here. Maybe we can start with a move like king h2, knight d4, and then go. No, but there's takes and knight f3 check. So that would be no good, forking everything. So we could try king g2 and then queen e4, f3, king slides. So this is possible. And if take, take, yeah, I think it's comfortable for black, but it doesn't seem like the biggest crisis for white. Excuse me. Okay. So queen g6, nice move. Suggestion for queen e4 takes, bishop takes e6. Get this endgame. Yeah, I would think white is fine here. I would think black does not have any real advantage here. Here I think white's absolutely okay. King comes to g2, the bishop on d2 is better than the bishop on g7. I really don't see a reason why black would be better here. I think I would definitely take white actually. So queen e4 actually this idea looks very playable. Queen e4 and bishop takes e6. I mean, maybe it's just a draw. Maybe Felix isn't able to really play for a win here, but yeah, at least we're certainly not worse. So we're able to play this one, I think, without risk, actually. So there is queen e4. I think we can calm down a bit. I think we got queen e4 if we really need to bail out here. Other than queen e4, let's see. Suggestion queen g4 take rook b d1. But then we're hanging this pawn as well. Although perhaps there's some ideas with queen g6, knight f8, queen takes d6. Hard to say, hard to say. Maybe black pulls back. Whoops. Just keeps the one extra pawn, then tries to put the knight on d4. Be very skeptical that white has enough here for the pawn. I'm not so sure. Yeah, I'm thinking queen e4. I'm thinking time to maybe bail out, go for this endgame. Because this knight d4 threat, it's very annoying to deal with. Very annoying. Okay, Felix thinking though. He's kind of getting ready to make a move. What's he looking at here? Trying to read his eye movements. Figure out what square is he looking at. It feels like he's really pointed towards the king side. Is he looking at queen g4? Queen g4, queen d3, and then something? Yeah, I'm not totally sure what's going on in this queen g4 line. We can take a look at it. So queen g4 take. Maybe black can take a second pawn. I mean, it's a lot of material. If white doesn't crash through, then white would be busted. So queen g6, knight here. Queen takes d6. White wins one back. But black can still get two extra pawns here. Queen takes c4. And they don't feel like white really has the compensation here to justify it. Queen f7, rook d8 coming. All black's pieces, a little passive for the knight, but at least it's on the king side, so defending the king. So it's definitely doing something very important, and it can hop out very quickly. So I'm honestly not totally sure that black can't take this one and try to justify it. There is rook b1 as well, so yeah, maybe rook b1. But then let's see, I don't have to take. I can go queen c2 to try and keep the tempo. Because I already have two pawns for black, so I don't need a third pawn. Third pawn would be nice, but two pawns plus tempo is good enough. And now maybe rook takes b7 is working. Queen takes d2, queen g6. This might be a big problem. This might be a big problem for black. Kind of amazing, right? Like white's down a piece, but the threats are very serious, actually. So to me, this looks like might be working for white. Okay, so that's maybe some computer stuff. Queen e4 played, human move. I think Felix is, yeah, looking to kind of bail out into this endgame. So now takes, he's going to take here, which possibly black underestimated. Because this endgame, I think, actually white can even try to squeeze a little bit. I think objectively equal, but I would more than likely rather have white in this position. You just have the better bishop. You have a little target on a5. If a4, you go b4, kind of keep a nice structure. Rook d1, rook d2, rook b d1, attacking d6. Your king has some light squares. Yes, I'd say there's some micro advantages here for white that, yeah, especially a grandmaster can start to use. So queen e4 with this very key point that I think chat spotted, takes, bishop takes e6 intermezzo. Very, very nice. Because otherwise, if black gets knight g5 here, hitting f3, hitting h3, here I think white might be suffering for a little while. Rook f8, f3 somewhere. Bishop also can support. So this would be, I think, a bit annoying for white. So queen e4 might be clutch move here from Felix. Might be clutch move. And okay, queen h5. Avoiding the trade. Ooh, Queen H5. Black is saying, I'm not trading queens with you, bro. I'm not trading queens with you. I'm going knight G5. Okay, some options for white. One, I would think maybe he can just take on E6 anyway. Try to play against the bad bishop and go king G2, rook H1 idea. And doesn't white have good control over the light squares here? Rook H1 coming next, and then white can start to build up on the H file. Yeah, micro advantage. Thank you. It's like micro expression. So queen H5. I kind of like this idea. Takes and king G2. Takes and king G2. And then white's in time with rook H1. If queen F5 here, queen F5 might be another thought, trying to insist on the queen trade. But then takes, knight G5 again. Trying to play for knight F3. Let's say king G2. It's unclear what's happening here. Wait, someone suggests tactic. Bishop E6, bishop takes F4. Hold on, and Felix is reaching for something. Take, bishop F4. Is this possible? Queen G4? And then white just pulls the bishop back with extra pawn. Did black just blunder in his attempt to avoid the endgame? Did black just blunder elementary tactic? Takes, bishop takes F4. If D5, white is taking twice on D5. Oh, if white wins this pawn, that's a big pawn. And he has taken on E6. And the black does not look happy. Black does not look happy. Takes, and now I was just thinking small advantage here, king G2, rook H1, but bishop takes F4, and yeah, Felix is on it. He's on it. He's grabbing the pawn. The opponent has his pen in his hand, ready to write it down. But I don't think he has a move in mind. I think the dude blundered it. Oh, but he is okay, he's reaching for something. So he's pretending like he saw everything. But I think this is the classic, pretend I have a move, but then start thinking. Whereas in fact, he just blundered the whole time. If he starts tanking here, then for sure, that's just the classic. Oh yeah, I had something in mind, but oh wait, I forgot about something. I didn't blunder bishop f4. I had something here. I blundered something later. No, he's reaching. He's really he's selling it. He's saying he has something. Bishop h6 maybe? He's trying to play for checkmates. But queen covers everything on the diagonal. So he pulls back again. He pulls back again. He still hasn't made a move. Still hasn't made a move. Now, if Felix stood up here, that would be a power move. He'd be like, all right, go ahead. Okay, bishop h6 played. But yeah, I don't think this was the intention here. I don't think black is happy about what has just happened. Because now this is extra pawn for white. Okay, it's a bit tricky because he has to deal with this pressure on the h file. But at a minimum, if he takes and goes queen g2, black has compensation, but it is an extra pawn for white. So I think it's actually quite good chances here for Felix. But he doesn't have to take. He can also pull back, although I'm not sure what he gets from doing this because bishop e3 black can just take and okay, here you might be in trouble. Although you can still run. So even this is like not that insane, but okay, it's not what white wants for sure. Um, so does he have a choice here other than bishop takes h6? Doesn't really feel like. I mean, black isn't threatening to take with the pawn. He's threatening to take with the bishop. So is there any king g2 super move? King g2 take rook h1, something like this? A queen somewhere, queen g4 defending the rook and pinning. Check, check, queen g8. It looks like we get some drawish endgame like this. Maybe white is slightly better. Better king. I mean, this could be unpleasant for black. Who knows? I'm sure all that is forced, but yeah, let's see what else we have. So here, takes king g2. It's bold. It's bold. Trying to get the king out. I guess we're in time. Like rook f8, we have rook h1. No problems here, right? White's super happy here, in fact. So black would have to go in queen h3 here. And yeah, I don't really see a way for black to punish this, but maybe he can just play for pressure, like rook f6, rook f8. Oh, but rook h1 here is problemo. Okay, queen d7. Game continues. Rook h2. But it looks kind of nice for white because if the king can get out of the way, then it's black's king that's actually in huge danger here. Black's king is open. So I think it's actually a very reasonable thought. And Felix, yeah, he's going to spend some time here to figure it out. There's also this idea, yeah, bishop e3 take with the pawn. And then on rook h6, you just have to cover the h2 square since h1 is already covered. So you go rook b2. This is very fancy. I would be surprised if Felix went for this because it feels weird to isolate your G pawn, but it does kind of make sense to bring the rook over. And bishop e3 on the board. Folks, wow. Felix. Felix playing like a very strong entity right now. Bishop e3. Because bishop takes e3. He's not taking with the queen. He's certainly not going for this position with the king having to like go to e4 if you're trying to. No way he wants this. Um, so I think he's spotted this idea to take with the pawn and put the rook on the second rank. And if queen e2, then rook f2, and everything is nicely covered for white. And so you're just bringing this one back, maybe rook h2. Yeah, bishop e3 GM level move. And now what does black do? Because if he doesn't take on e3 here, he just looks like a chump with the bishop on h6. So what can he? Maybe he can go king g7, rook h8, try to build up like this. But the problem is if you don't take on e3 right now, white is in time to go king g2, rook h1. So if you make some king move, white goes king g2, and now takes, white can just recapture with the queen. And you're too slow with any rook moves because of rook h1. So once white gets rook h1 in the position, shuts down the h file, then I think like a position like this, effectively over. Just super healthy extra pawn for white, safer king. We were talking about micro advantages earlier. This would be, macro advantages. Um, so bishop e3, and yeah, mic drop from Felix. He gets up from the board. So takes, and if white's in time with rook b2, because like black needs the rook on g7, basically. That's what black needs. Black needs to bring the rook from a8 to g7 in two moves. But that's not how the rook moves, unfortunately. You can't do that. And so king h8 is just too slow. White's bringing the rook to h2. Check here. Okay, this is just a very sample line, but I think should be good for white somehow. Although actually I don't quite see it. Maybe here. Queen d1 check. Maybe white can attack somehow. Hmm. So wait, so here king h8, rook up, rook g8. Okay, maybe white has to slow down with a move like rook f3, but oh no, but hold on. Rook b2, black also has rook h6 idea. So no, it's really not that easy actually. King g2, king g2 maybe, and then bringing the rook like this so that you have extra protection on h1. Queen e2 check, rook f2. Queen h5, rook h1, GG. Yeah, king g2 is the move here. And then rook g8, rook h1. Takes, takes. You're pinned, you can't do anything. Whoops. Rook g6, we take. So this should be 3. Yeah, Felix good at chess. Headline of today. And if he wins this game, guys, he basically wins the tournament. Basically over because now he's defeated his top competition. Next, he starts playing some lower rated players in the field. Everyone's a point behind. So, huge game if he can win this one. And the meal now tanking. Looks like he's falling into pressure. Might be even under 30 minutes now. So, big problems for black here. Down a pawn, and white is the one with the compensation. And yeah, we can kind of see it on his face. Emil not happy here. Shaking his head, and yeah, it's not good. It's a fortunate case. I mean, it's like black was doing well here, and basically has white under pressure, but then slips for one move. Just slips with this queen h5. Loses his grip on the wheel, and that's it. That's it. Extra pawn. Welcome to suffering. Yeah, black was playing well, but unfortunately, that's chess. You have to play precise the whole game. And I've done this so many times where I'm playing well, but then on the third hour, by the fourth hour, start blundering something. Start blundering something. You know, it happens. It happens. Black now is going to have to come to terms with his mortality, but that's chess. Yeah, we're seeing the 5 stages of grief right now, basically. But at some point, okay, he'll come up with an idea. I think he'll find a way to keep playing. The issue for black is that king g2, rook h1 is coming. So if he does any move like rook g6, king up, white's going king g2, rook h1, which is very uncomfortable. Takes is the obvious move, but then white takes. And now king g2, rook h1 is coming anyway. If you go rook h6, white starts with rook b2. Maybe black can kind of play like this. Because here it's not like white can take over the h file, but white can try to trade some pieces off. Let's say rook g8, queen g2. I would say actually this is still not the most easy position to convert for white. Rook g6, rook f8 perhaps. If takes were taking. Takes, takes, king g7. And somewhere, white tries to win. Tries like this, like trading off one pair of rooks and finding some kind of infiltration. Yeah, bishop takes e3 feels absolutely necessary because, yeah, simply what else? And then I think white has to take with the pawn because queen e3, rook h6. Yeah, doesn't feel very fun for white. So I'm expecting pawn takes and then at least rook h6 before white has a chance to play king g2 and can meet it with rook h1. So at least force white to yeah, not be able to have the h file. But Emil thinking here, so maybe he's gonna come up with something else. I'm not sure what else, but what can he do? Because there's no d5. We're just taking. And yeah, if you like just bring the rook in, you might not end up in time. Like rook f8, king g2. Now rook h1, big threat. If bishop takes e3, now we can take with the queen. We can just go rook h1 next move and completely take over the h file, and it's just crushing for white because king is safer. Okay, black is reaching. He's reaching. Both players, big hovers. Big hovers. They could just play the whole game hovering. It's just not even making making moves. Queen f2, rook takes g3 check. Wait, what line was that? This was bishop takes e3 fe, rook h6, b2. Oh, at the end here, I see. Here, queen f2. Yes, here actually, right. So yeah, and then black is holding. So that would be the thing white is trying to avoid. So then white has to just kind of keep the extra pawn, but this would be a very long battle actually. I think this is not easy for white to convert at all. Black's still thinking. He was hovering, but now he's still thinking. But yeah, I think this is the best you can really do. Take and rook h6 anyway. Just kind of play into white's idea, but at least, yeah, you make it hard for white to use the extra pawn. Spending time still, watching the video. Still spending time. And he must be hard to see, but he must be approaching 20 minutes at this point. He's going back into the tank. But I don't know if this is a great time usage. I feel like, yeah, you gotta come to terms with the position and play the board you've been given. He does take on e3, yeah, after a long think. But he might have spent a little bit too much time there because I think we've already concluded long ago that this was the best chance. Okay, Felix here taking a pause, but we are expecting FE. Queen e3, rook h6, king g2 just feels very, very dramatic. And yeah, he does take with the pawn. And now I'm thinking rook h6 here is again necessary. Otherwise, if we give white one move to play king g2, rook h1, then white is taking over the h file. So rook h6 here feels absolutely necessary. And then Felix is going to bring one of his rooks to the second rank. Okay, he's leaning, he's pulling. He wants to go rook h6, but no. Queen? No, he's going for the rook. Oh, goes back. Yeah, rook g6, king g2. I just think everything is suggesting rook h6 here. Some indecisiveness. He likes the seconds ticking off his clock. All right, rook h6 played. And now we have two moves as white, either rook f2 or rook b2. I feel like Felix should have already kind of anticipated this and maybe even made up his mind what he wants to do here, but now that we're at this position, he might want to have a fresh think as well. And his opponent quickly walks away, clearly a bathroom walk, because he's anticipating Felix to move fast and he wants to get back in time, not lose time off the clock. Oh, what about rook g6, king g2, and then rook h6? Interesting. Fair enough, actually. Maybe this was worth considering. Queen f3. No. Um, hmm. Because if rook h1, black has check. King g1 takes, king takes, and yeah, a bit active. Yeah, actually, it's not clear if king g2 is a healthy move for white. So we were saying rook h6 is needed, but yeah, maybe king g2 can be answered with rook h6. Very funny, huh? This queen e2 is actually so yeah, I was not paying attention to this queen e2 at all, actually. So then white should play a bit different, in fact. Maybe queen f3 or something. Just trying to go for this pawn up rook endgame. Rook b2 on the board. So yeah, Felix decides to use the rook farther from the king, which makes a lot of sense to cover h2. And yeah, I think now he's going to want to try and offer the queen trade to get into this rook endgame. Healthy extra pawn where he can very slowly squeeze and grind it out. Felix, big endgame guy, as far as I understand. I've heard he's got like these endgame videos and yeah, clearly willing to play a lot of endgames. Last night he won a big endgame with black that he had to convert. So seems like that's his intention here to go queen f3 and try to get into a double rook endgame with extra pawn. Okay, we'll see. We'll see if he can squeeze it out. His opponent back at the board. Yeah, big endgame guy. So black to play here after rook to b2. I think king h8, yeah, is a very natural move to try and get the other rook in. Just create massive compensation for the extra pawn. What else? King g7 doesn't really make a lot of sense because I think we're just blocking the rook. So yeah, I like king h8, rook g8. And then maybe white's going rook g2, queen f3. Wait, not rook g2 because that allows check, but queen f3, queen h3, maybe queen g2, queen back. I think black should try to keep the queens on. I feel like that would make it as difficult as possible for white to make progress. Rook f5 maybe, but rook f5, we allow queen d1 check, and then we might just have to drop back rook d1. But okay, yeah, I think definitely anticipating king h8 here. Hard to come up with other moves. Queen h3, queen g2, we can answer. So king h8, and then there'll be an interesting question what white is playing. Queen f3, rook g2. No, I keep saying this rook g2, but then queen h1 check is like king rook g2 is like a losing move here. So I gotta stop saying rook g2 is a move. It's just like loses on the spot. So queen g2 maybe, queen f3. These are white's options. Queen f3, queen h3. Now rook g2 is more possible. Now there's no check on the f file. So maybe here, but rook g8, king f2, and something like this. If white could manage to slide away with the king, bring his rooks up, start fighting for the h file, this is how he can try to convert. But not so easy. Not so easy. Okay, we have a move? No, not yet. He's back thinking. But this could get tricky for black as he runs low on time. I mean, there's no extra time in the tournament. It's 90 plus 30. So once you're down on the clock, you're gonna get into some kind of rook endgame eventually, most likely. And yeah, that time is going to be needed. I wish we could see better how much time black actually has here. But yeah, clearly hesitating. I wonder what he's thinking about. King h8 does feel like um, the move. Is he worried about some d4 from white? King h8 d4. Trying to open things up. Maybe rook f2 is his problem, but rook f2 you can always play queen d1 check. Can't go here because queen h1. So this would force white to repeat, and then you can go back. So rook f2, not really a concern. Maybe white has a slow plan of like rook d2, rook f2, rook h2, but by then black is already going rook g8. So queen f3, queen h3, and we're back to rook g2. What's happening here? Rook g6, trying to double, but we have check and check. Of course, rook g8, queen goes back, rook here. But no, queen h6 not working. It's rook g3 at the end. But this is all analysis. Question is, what is black considering here? Maybe some options with queen g5, queen h3. Is this likely to be a draw? I'm honestly not sure. I think white actually has pretty decent chances to convert this, especially given the time situation. Oh, there was a nice line there from Jacob. Thank you. Yeah, so if white is too slow, rook d2, rook g8, queen f3, there's rook takes g3 here. Beautiful shot. And black would be winning. So all the more reason to play king h8. So I'm all the more confused why he hasn't played it yet. It's like such a natural move. Get the third rook into the game. Third piece. He's got to be worried about something that I just not quite understanding what it is. Maybe he's just trying to figure out, okay, here, like king h8, maybe queen f3 right away, queen h3, rook g2, maybe just trying to figure out what he's doing in this position, but queen g2 also. I don't know. Seems like you could just play king h8 and let white come up with their next move. Maybe rook f5 he was thinking. No, but any rook lifts, there's queen d1. Always queen d1 check to force white back. Okay, let's see what he wants to do. Maybe king f2 he's thinking about. Maybe. Maybe, but let white find king f2, I would say. Let white find it. What options does black really have here? Rook f8? Is he wondering about rook f8? Just to trade off a piece around white's king. No, king h8 played. Okay. So we were saying the whole time we were living in reality. King h8 natural move, but spent a long time to make it. And now we'll see if Felix had something in mind here or not. Definitely not the easiest position actually to push because white's king is quite open. So one mistake, you lose the game. So you have to be very, very precise with how you try and improve this position. So once again, any rook moves can be met with queen d1 check, except rook f3. But rook f3 blocks our own queen, so that just gets mated in two moves. So that's not good. So I don't expect we'll see any rook moves. For me, queen f3 looks like the first move to consider here to challenge black's queen. You'd also think about queen g2 just to completely cover up and then prepare rook f2. Because if you start rook f2 or rook g8, if you lose sight of the road, you can get bonked. But does this even work for black? Rook f8 check. Oh, wow, what a trick. So even this doesn't actually work for black because white just has too much play on the king side. So queen g2, rook f2, and then try to slowly make progress from here. Rook f3, rook f2, queen h2, and so on. Yeah, queen g2 I think makes some sense here. Okay, let's get back to live position. So king h8. Felix thinking here how to convert extra pawn. Folks, let me take a quick break here. And then we'll be back to catch rest of the game. Alrighty. Yes, we will be right back, folks. See you soon. Alrighty, folks, we are back. We have some big action on the board. Wait, let's catch up here. So, last couple moves. Guys, maybe help me out here. King H8 was played. We had Queen F3, Queen H3, Rook G2, Rook G8, G4 looks like, and then E4. Looks like takes, and Rook E6 on the board. I might have messed up the move order, but I think this is our live position. So let's go back. King H8, Queen F3 played, Queen H3, Rook G2, Rook G8, and then G4 happened. So big move from Felix. Of course, inviting the queen trade, inviting check, King F2, not afraid of anything here. And indeed, it looks good for white. And then black threw E4 at him to sacrifice the pawn. Because if queen takes H3, oh, G4 before Rook G2. Oh, so it was like this. Queen H3 went G4 here. Ah, that makes sense. And then Rook G8, saying go ahead and trade. White went Rook G2. You go ahead and trade. And then black went E4. No, you go ahead and trade. And even here he didn't take because takes, Rook takes. Black's Rook breaks through. So he just takes with the pawn. And now black finally decides to trade and go Rook E6. So it's two pawns up for white, but the pawns are very weak. So black definitely has blockading chances. Question is it enough? White goes Rook F4, for example, brings up the king to F3, starts improving this rook. So it's not enough to just blockade the pawns, because eventually white will just trade down one rook, trade down second rook, and then you're in a king and pawn endgame, two pawns down, right? Very, very hard to hold that. So it's hard for me to believe this, but the other thing is black can at least win back one pawn. The question is that going to be enough? Because by winning back a pawn, black is also forced to trade off a pair of rooks. And then with a single rook endgame, I think that gives white a lot more chances to squeeze something like this for the full point. So this is looking like very good winning chances here for Felix. I mean, definitely no losing chances, two pawns up. So it's kind of exactly the endgame he was hoping to get, where he can play for two results and slowly convert it. But I think it's really good winning chances here. I don't know. I don't know how confident I would be that I can win it as white, but I feel like in the hands of a grandmaster, then for sure it's very, very unpleasant here for black. But Felix thinking, so he hasn't played Rook F4 yet. Maybe he's thinking about some rook check. Not sure if this is really helpful, but maybe he can even consider King F2, allowing black to take on E4 just so he can try to infiltrate. Maybe this is the other idea, actually. You can even go Rook F7 here. Rook F7 threatens mate in one. Wait, so does Rook F7 just win the game? Because threatening mate in one and threatening to just break through. If white starts taking pawns on the queen side, I mean, it's too much. So Rook F7, black might be forced to trade off this rook with Rook G7. But then at least black is still getting at least one pawn back, and we get again the single rook endgame with white having an extra pawn, and to my eyes, very reasonable winning chances here. So rook f7 possible for sure. So clearly that's what's on Felix's mind here. And oh, he's reaching for the other rook. Where is he going? Wait, surely he's not going to hang. Oh, he wants rook h2 check. Okay, okay. Yeah, he's not going to hang g4 with check. So rook h2 he's playing. King g7 will happen. And now Rook h5, rook g5. Rook h5 played. Ooh. Ooh, nasty. So if takes rook g5 check, you have to keep the rook defended, but then you get mated. But if you play king h6, you lose the rook. So rook h5, rook g5. Oh, and he's hitting the a pawn too. Okay, I don't think it's over though. I mean, black can go rook g6 at least. And I don't think white wants to take the a pawn and give the g pawn so easily. But maybe he goes rook f4 and just says, now you're stuck. King has no moves, and rook takes a5 is coming. I also want to go rook f5, rook f7. By the way, not a lot of time for black. I remind you folks, there's no second time control, and it looks like it's something like 14 minutes for Felix against 7 for black. Maybe you guys can see better. So under heavy pressure and 2 pawns down. It might be just mathematically winning for white, but even if it's not, black is clearly on the verge of collapsing. It's like one mistake and you get a losing position. Yeah, Felix wants to win the tournament right here and now. If he wins this game, folks, 6 out of 7, he'll be at least a half a point ahead. Actually, we can check on board two. Really quickly, let's just see what's happening on board two here. This game was pretty chaotic, but it's also hit the end game. So this one actually, okay, basically all three results possible, but white is definitely a big favorite by rating. So either player here could potentially have 5.5 points. And then the player playing black here, FIDE Master from Ireland, if he wins this end game, he can also have 5.5 points. So it'd be very nice for Felix to be able to win this game to stay ahead. Yeah, I really like this Rook H2, Rook H5. To me, it definitely looks like a great idea. A4 played. Okay, let's find our live position. We had a million lines we were looking at. Bu- 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 bu. So here we had G4, Rook G8, takes, here, check, here, and A4 played. Wow. Just going full hog, trying to weaken the fourth rank. Maybe Felix starts with Rook G5 check and then goes B4. Can also consider taking eventually too. But I think you start with Rook G5 check. King H7 loses to Rook H3. So Rook G5, Rook G6 would be forced. Then maybe take. King takes. B4. You put the rook on F4 and you say you're 2 pawns up. White's king starts coming in. Still, black has counterplay. Black has counterplay. Rook G5 check on the board. Rook G6 here feels extremely forced. In fact, Felix keeping his hand on the pen. That's how forced it is. Yep, Rook G6 played. And now I don't really think Rook F5 is a thing. I think White just has to take. He does trade. Black recaptures. And now we're going to see a decision on this A pawn, probably B4. Yeah. Because BA4, we'd be 3 pawns up temporarily, but black would just have so many weaknesses to target. And yeah, it feels like after BA4, feels like you would be losing back all 3 pawns eventually. Probably these three, in fact. And then yeah, you might even lose the game 3 pawns up. Insane. Insane. So B4 played. Now if King G5, you have to be careful because of course white is 2 pawns up, but what white really wants to do is to ditch one of these pawns and break through on the queen side. If White's rook can get to B7 and B6, then it's over. Like, doesn't matter what black is doing with our G pawn. We're gonna win on the queen side. So this feels still very, very promising for white. You also have rook f4 just to solidify and defend, and then king f2, king f3. And it seems like we might even be able to win smoothly here as white if we want to. The pawns are ugly, but they're extra. They're very, very extra. Yeah, rook e8 is another idea here. Let's say rook f4. And black needs something quick because if white is able to stabilize with king f2, king f3, then the rook starts moving around. The rook can go to a5, a7. It's just over. And black is down to, I think, looks like 6 minutes now. So very critical moment. How to try to defend this. I feel like you have to start with rook e8. I don't see what else. King g5. I mean, white can even go king f2 here, indicating that you can't take the pawn. And I think white is still very much in control, but rook f7 just looks fantastic. Yeah, I think Felix is very close to winning this one. Go Felix. Not seeing how black defends this. Rook e8 to rook f4. And then the king is just walking up and okay, maybe d5 we can try. But I think white just takes this one. Rook takes here. Okay, maybe this is still a bit tricky because here black is getting counterplay with rook takes a3. Although who knows, maybe white's first. Maybe white's just first. Just for example, check, king up, push, 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 queen. And you can give your rook, but king takes g1, rook d1, you're down a rook, otherwise getting mated. Okay, rook e8 played. So now we're expecting rook f4. No reason, I think, to give up one of the pawns just yet. If we had a way to give the pawn and helicopter the rook to b6, fantastic. But I think rook takes e4, allowing this would be too much. So rook f4 feels very, very necessary. Though Felix is thinking about it, so maybe he has something else in mind. He could also play like king f2 and then rook f4 and keep one extra pawn. But not sure why he needs this when he can just play rook f4 and keep two extra pawns. If rook h8 here, king g2, and black isn't really making progress so easily on the h file. And next white wants to go rook f5, rook a5, or otherwise some kind of breakthrough. d5 played. Okay, he does go for this d5. Now maybe white can take and ignore on e4. It's something like king f2. Let's say pawn takes e4, and then rook f5 with the idea that we only have one extra pawn, but we keep control. Rook d8, rook a5. But okay, something like this, it's never clear really what's happening. This is where we get into all rook endgames are drawn territory. But here, rook a7, not sure how drawish this one is. I feel like this one white's doing quite well. So white has some options here. d5 on the board, huge break. Black trying to save this rook endgame. But he can go the safe route with king f2, where he has a comfortable advantage. He can also just try to win the game. So this one actually, to me, it looked like a forced win. So rook d4. Okay, he doesn't have to take on a3, though. He can still drop back king f7. So rook takes a3, d6. This looked kaput, like just game over. Black is not stopping the pawn. So he'd have to play king f7 as kind of last chance. But yeah, here it's not super easy to say if white is on time or not. So g5, black gives check, tries to come down this way. So to me, this actually is super unclear, this position, because if you push too quickly, the rook gets behind the pawn and you can lose the G pawn. Oh, e takes d5 played in king f2. Oh, Felix found very simple solution. Oh, okay. He doesn't need any calculation, just takes king f2. His pawns are defended. Ah, I think Emil overlooked this because he looks like a man who is very unhappy because he just allowed white to trade off his weakness. I mean, maybe he was winning for white anyway. Like he can advance king f2, king f3, rook f5, and so on. But with d5, he just allowed white to just completely trade off. Oh, very, very good find by Felix. And there's the resignation. That's it. He just resigned because now it's just two healthy pawns for white. White is just two pawns up. Oh, very smooth find there by Felix. Very, very nice. Huge win, folks. Huge win for fans of Felix because that means that he's now leading the tournament 6 points out of 7. Really nice technical game today. Of course, Black made some mistakes, but it was here after Queen G5, Bishop H3, Queen G6. We had this key moment, Queen E4, Queen H5, where Black blundered the pawn, and then some very nice GM level technique from Felix to convert the game. So Felix now 6 out of 7. Let's just check in with board 2. He's already played Krostov here, so if Krostov manages to win this game, they're not going to play again. But Felix will be playing someone else. Although it's not clear to me that White is even winning this game. Mhm. Yeah, folks, we'll wrap it up here. Um, there will be another stream tomorrow and the next day for the final 2 rounds. So stay tuned to see if Felix can keep it up and manage to actually win the tournament. That's it for me. I don't think I'll be back, but it's been a pleasure. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in, hanging out.